I'm here with Devin of the Acacia strain to talk about You Are Safe from God Here. Definitely in our presence, you're definitely safe from God here. I can tell you that much. The album drops October 24th on Rise Records. First of all, thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to chat with this dude right here about this upcoming new record that absolutely kicks ass from the first Eucharist to the last, I must say. Thank you once again for being on the channel.
Hey, not a problem. Thank you for having me.
So let's start off by talking a little bit about the title because I feel like there's a philosophical message there, and maybe one that's not so philosophical, that's a little bit more just straight to the point. But where did you guys find the inspiration for a title like this?
Um, Vincent came up with it, and it's just one of those things that it popped into his head one day. I think when he's just like on a walk and or doing whatever he does when he's by himself, and just a thought pops into his head, and he goes, "Oh, I like that," and then it became this thing that he just kept like coming back to, and he's like, "That's the record. That's the title." And one of the first times too that we've actually used like the album title like in the record. On Wormwood, there's like a line that's it's slow decay. Okay, we've done it before, but there's the record starts with him saying you are safe from God here.
And at what point? So it's almost like a question of the chicken and the egg. Did the idea for the album title create the idea to start and end the record with Eucharist 1 and 2?
Um, I don't believe it did. I think it's our song titles are the absolute last thing that happens. Like we have stupid song titles for everything until Vincent has recorded vocals and everything is done. And even then, it's like he hasn't named them until like they're done, and it's like he'll go through and excuse me. A lot of times, the the song title may have nothing at all to do with the song. It just might be something he liked. But it's kind of funny. Like we'll be completely done with the record, and we're waiting to see the final artwork, and then Vincent will also send us a text that's just like, "Here's what I'm thinking."
I thought the title of the record, starting off the album with a song title like that, and the way it kicks off, and then closing with Eucharist 2, kind of define the borders of the record, if you will.
Yeah,
Everything that happens in between is left to interpretation. So I felt like you guys created an album where you tell me exactly where the record starts and you're telling me exactly where the record ends, and then the in between, it's really left to the listener to kind of find its way through. And that made the record very engaging from my perspective as a listener, because I was not forced down a specific path. I was able to kind of discover my way through it and
yeah.
really find my way through it. Does the track listing, when it comes to this record specifically, an important aspect of what you guys wanted the album experience to be at the end of the day?
Um, when we were coming up with track listing, because it is something we put a great deal of thought into as far as like how things flow. Um, but there wasn't, besides saying we want to open with this song and we want to close with this song. Besides that, there was no like this has to be here and this has to be here. It's just kind of like how does it flow? And we tried a couple different orders, and it ends up being like this one to us works best. And it is made quite a bit easier um, with our current. I don't want to say formula for writing, but like we try to make everything like all killer, no filler. Just if a song is a minute and a half long, but we've accomplished what we want to do with that song, we don't need to add more. We don't need to drag it out longer than it needs to be dragged out. So that helps you kind of make a really cohesive record that isn't, you don't get to a certain point and go, "Oh, okay," and then not even realize the song changed because you've got bored and kind of tuned out.
Hmm. And I felt like the album design, because I've seen you guys live, so I felt like the album design from a structural standpoint kind of mimic a little bit the experience that I get when I see you guys play live, the way you choose the songs, and then not just the way you choose the songs, but the way you order the set list, which I always felt like you guys do a very good job live, keeping the listener connected with the experience of the show. And I felt like this album kind of mimicked that. Do you feel that same connection between the two?
Absolutely, because with our live shows, like we try, if you've seen us especially, you know that we try to keep the energy going the whole
Mm.
set. And there are songs that like we love that we want to play, and we've tried to work them in, and then they just don't go over live. You know, people enjoy them, but it's like the energy doesn't keep up, and you
Mhm.
don't want to have this dip. So we will, pull that song from a set and be like, maybe, when we do like our holiday shows or whatever, where we're playing deep cuts, maybe we can throw it in there. But on a tour, it's like we want the energy going, and the same goes for record. We wanted this record to be really like explosive, in your face, and angry and sad, and angry because you're sad, all that kind of stuff. So when we came to write the record, we had a Dropbox with, I want to say, like 40 different demos in it, and
Wow.
there's a lot of fat that gets trimmed, and it's because you're like, okay, this is really cool. Maybe we'll do something with this at some point in the future, but the mission statement, if you will, for this record is aggressive and just in your face, like I said. So sometimes something that's a bit more on the slower emotional side, it's like we'll table that.
And speaking of not necessarily emotional, but something that a little bit more demanding, the closing track, Eucharist 2. Wow, that song, first of all, when I was looking at even before I listened to the track, when I was looking at the track listing, I see that song with 13 plus minutes, and I'm like, wow, the closing track is almost half of the length of the overall album. You don't
Right.
see that every day. Right away, that piques your interest because I'm like, wow, they normally give me the meat and potatoes. They don't put a lot of vegetables on their meal. They just come in, hit hard, and the song is done. What the fuck are they going to give me with 13 plus minutes to close off the record? And I thought that song was so unique in not only in the context of the album, but I felt very unique in the context of the band itself that made me wonder how did this track, this behemoth of a song be spawned? Like how did that happen?
I mean, it comes down to one, we love doom and sludge and all of this kind of stuff, and we've done a lot of it in the past. Like, um, Failure Will Follow, one of the last two records, that's all in that similar vein. We've done a lot of it on It Comes in Waves. Observer on Coma Witch that's 28 minutes. And it's just a thing we like, and we'll infuse some of those elements into songs, but we also like we like doing the fast and aggressive stuff as well, as much as we like doing that stuff. And it's kind of coming down to like, not we don't always want to close a record like that, but it's like, okay, we can kind of take some of the feelings that we've had throughout the first 10 songs or whatever, and let's look at those same feelings from a different perspective. And while you might have, like I said, a minute and a half song that is just really like, it just kicks your ass really quick, this one is just slowly pulling you apart, and you're finding all of these different emotions when you're hearing it. And it's not only from the vocal performance or the guest vocals or anything like that. Everything, drums are being hit harder, they're tuned a bit lower. Even guitar stuff, some of the chord stuff, it's allowed to breathe a bit more.
Mhm. I thought that aspect of the guitar sound, not just on that track, but on the whole album, was really interesting. And I want to ask you about the guitars. But before that, one of the things about this record is that, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, this album really encapsulates what the Acacia strain is sonically. Because I feel like this album, if I worked at an old record store where you have to put an album based on the genre, I honestly don't know where I'm going to slot this because there's a little bit of everything that you guys have done over the years encapsulated in a single record. Does this album help define the difficulty that it is defining the Acacia Strain's music?
Yeah, I think so. And really, like every time we make a record, it's we're kind of putting the stamp on it of like this is who the Acacia Strain is this year. It's this ever evolving entity, and that's between our own tastes, between member changes because it unfortunately happens. Sometimes people like our longtime drummer Kevin. He's wanted to spend more time at home with his daughter, which I can respect that. We all can. So he stopped touring with us, and we had Matt come in, who we've has filled in for Kevin before and was a good friend of ours. And the same with Mike, who's our other guitar player now. He came in for the last two records, and it's Vincent is a great curator of finding the right musicians to match what his idea is for the record that we want to make, and people who understand the sound and like will complement it. So it's like this ever changing thing. And while it's kind of hard to describe in a genre, and people ask like, "Oh, what kind of music do you play?" I'm always just like heavy metal because it's the easiest way to describe it. There was an interview many years before I was in the band where Vincent said something like, "Don't call us deathcore," and it's not even like that we don't like the term, but I just think that we are so far removed from a lot of the bands that get the genre. And while we have some of those elements and we were a band that kind of helped originally define what that sound was, we're so much more than that. And it's not that I don't want to be called deathcore. I don't want to be called hardcore or metalcore. We're just a band, and we try not to box ourselves in with what we want to do. It's like, okay, I really like this sound. How can I incorporate that into what we do while still sounding like the Acacia Strain? Like on Basin of Vows, the last song on Failure to Follow, like there's this clean guitar, like real kind of laid back post rock stuff, but we made it fit Acacia Strain. And it's always kind of that thing where like, how can we fit more stuff into what like defines us as a band?
And I think that's a great way of looking at it because if you allow a label to define the band, then you really pigeonhole yourself to just one specific set of ideas, parameters, and even sounds. And when I listen to this record, I think the texture of the sound is what sells the record because you go from some doomier moments to some sludgier moments to some breakdowns to some more emotional stuff. I mean, there's a little bit of everything, but when an album is this aggressive as this record is, having that texture of sound allows the aggressiveness of the album to be easier digested by the listener. At least that's my humble opinion.
Yeah, it's not too much of one thing. Like a lot of bands are like, "Oh, that breakdown's really heavy," and then they happen over and over again, and it loses its the effect that it has when you kind of it's nonstop. So having just different definitions of heavy from song to song, I think really helps to break it up. Um, I kind of think about it as like um, what I'd call like the George Lucas effect, where at one point he like redid all of the stuff like the original Star Wars movies, added CGI the whole time, and so special effects are happening every single scene, every frame of the movie, and when that happens, they're no longer special. And I think the same thing is important with music, where it's like, yeah, you can do this like really cool thing or the stuff that is like a mind blowing technique or something that sounds really like crushingly heavy, but if you do it the whole time, it loses the effect.
Yeah, I think you become desensitized to it. It
Yeah.
doesn't have that impact that you want it to have anymore because you're just become kind of numb to it. A song like World Gone Cold has killer guitar sound, and killer guitar sound is something you're going to find throughout the entire album. What was the thought process for a song like that, but for the overall record in terms of what the vision was of what the guitar sound needed to be?
Just as far as guitar sound goes, we always want to push that forward and not just be like, all right, this is what heavy guitars sound like, so let's do the same thing that we've been doing. It's always adding new stuff. Like we did, there's always going to be 5150 in the mix as far as amps go, but there's a 5150. There's Mike has like a rack mount rectifier from the 90s. Um, 5152 is also there because they do sound a bit different. And we used a Marshall JVM, which we haven't used a Marshall before, but doing all that and then just putting so many pedals in front of it and having not only boosts but like different octave effects and stuff to make the guitar just sound ridiculous while still sounding like a guitar. But there's so much in the layers where you're adding this lower octave where it doesn't sound quite like you're using an octave pedal. And there's even spots where Randy, our producer, he's got like a Fender Rhodes like electric piano, and there's spots like I can't remember where exactly we use it, but there's spots where like he's hitting like a low F on that through a bunch of distortion to like beef up everything else that's happening, but it blends with the guitar sound.
Wow, that's really cool. That is really cool. Like I said, I really enjoyed the overall guitar sound on this record, and one of the things that happens quite often, at least from my side as a listener, when I'm listening to really heavy records, sometimes the heaviness of the album, and the heaviness of the guitar specifically, becomes quite dense, and it becomes very difficult to tell the forest from the trees. It feels heavy, but you're not quite sure exactly what's behind that heaviness. I thought you guys walked a very fine line between creating a very heavy sound on the guitars, even with a lot of fuzz, but not necessarily creating a sense of density where you don't see the layers in the sound and you don't see the layers of the guitars. Does that come down to the way the guitars get recorded, or does that get down to the way the production handles that guitar sound afterwards?
It's a bit of both, but because when we're recording, we do pre-production on everything, and we kind of start to figure out like how thick do we want the guitars here? Because a lot of bands will have like, here's a guitar sound, do that for the record. And unless it changes to like a clean part or whatever, it's like that's the sound. The guitar sound on this is mostly, Randy LaBeouf, who we record with and who produces us, he is essentially like the sixth member of our band. He understands what we're trying to do and knows how to like get us to that like just wall of sound kind of thing where, all right, this part's going to have 8 layers of guitar. They're all going to be a bit different. We'll blend them together. This is going to sound huge. And that's going to go back down to, 4 two mains, two backup, not backup, but like 2 layers. And doing that and varying throughout, like, okay, this part's going to have that lower octave, and this part over here is going to have this effect on it, and just things that they would sound drastically different right next to each other. But when you kind of like let them move around throughout the track, where like, okay, this part is going to have this going on, that also like helps to keep you engaged.
From a listener standpoint, it definitely connects well. From your standpoint, as the one playing it, does that give you a little bit more room to breathe and to do what you want to do and still feel creative and not necessarily having to follow a specific path, a specific line?
Yeah. So one thing that is extremely important to me is having that room to breathe. Um, I give guitar lessons and songwriting lessons, and one thing I'm always telling my students as far as writing goes, I'm like, do less. As a guitar player, when you're sitting at home writing, most people just want to write the coolest thing they've ever written, and they want to be technical, which is great. But if you have to leave space, you have to leave room for like, oh, bass can do something cool here while this is just ringing out, or guitars, other guitar can do something, drums can do something, vocals. So it's kind of like, how does this, if I'm writing something and it's like, there's too much going on here, this isn't helping the song at all. I care about the song. So let me pull back a little bit. Let me play less. Let me leave some space give the song some breathing room. So then when we come in and do something crazy, more impactful.
Love it, because that's exactly how this album, at least to me, how it came across. Speaking of riffs, do you have a favorite Acacia Strain riff to play live? One that you're like, oh fuck, I love this every night I get to do this.
Yeah. So on the song, Is This Really Happening? And also Bass in the Vows, because the riff is played on both songs a little differently. There's I don't want to call it a chorus because it's not laid out like that, but there's this part that's got this cool like bendy thing and it goes up a bit higher. In Bass in the Vows is the part where Vincent's saying, I can make the hurting stop. And in Is This Really Happening? I can't remember the lyrics off the top of my head. But it's the same part. It's like, bow, bow, down, bow, down, down, down. Like that part's just really fun to play live.
Do you go in a zone when you're playing? Do you how much do you take in from, because like I said, I've seen you guys live. The shows are incredibly hectic. From an audience standpoint, there's so much shit happening. The intensity level is so high. At least from an audience standpoint, how is the intensity level for you on stage? Do you get phased by what's happening, or you kind of go into a zone?
I absolutely get phased, and there's times I don't want to, but um, I can see everything that's happening. Um, I can, to the back of the room, I can see like, what's that guy doing over there? And sometimes you see something goofy, and I'm like, I have to turn around and laugh at the cabs. But yeah, I like there's times I kind of go into a zone, but it's mostly like I'm feeding off of the crowd. Hopefully, they're feeding off of us. And every once in a while, you have the person in the front who's just like doesn't want to be there, and it's like you're sitting there and you're like, why are you there? Somebody else would like to stand there. Go away.
Oh,
And but I also try not to let that mess with me too much because there's times where after the show you'll see that person who looked angry the whole time. And they're like, "You guys were great," and you're like, "What? You
maybe
look like
that's
you were
just
having
how
a
they take
bad
it all
time."
in. Maybe that's
Yeah,
the way they absorb it. I don't know.
absolutely.
Everybody takes stuff in differently. The experience that you guys have playing live, touring, does that impact the songwriting from your standpoint at all?
Um, on touring, I don't think so much. Because we do a lot of writing at home, and really, it's just kind of like whatever state of mind everybody is in. Because everyone will write a ton of stuff, and we'll go through and listen to it, and everybody will kind of make notes on like, I like this, I don't like this riff. And once we start to compile like the stuff that, okay, we all like these parts, that's going to start to mold like the feel of the record. And then we'll start to take those, the cool ideas that we all agreed on that worked for like what we want to go for. Then we'll start to build off of that. And I think the only effect that touring really has on it is like just more time for us to spend together and make sure that we're still staying connected because it is hard when you're at home just sending riffs back and forth. It's not the same as being in the room with everybody. Um, but I think that slight disconnect also lets everyone's individual ideas come out a bit easier.
An album cycle like this one, when you're setting yourself to release, well, before releasing, when you're setting yourself to create a new record, like you are safe from God here, is there any pressure during that time period, or does everything flow very organically for you guys now?
It feels very organic, and I think it's we don't put pressure on ourselves. Um, I can see how it happens for younger bands, especially if you have like you release something and everybody really likes it, and you're like, okay, how do we follow this up? What do we do? And we like I don't care about anything else we've put out before when it comes time to write a record. Um, I don't want to recreate something. I don't want to be like, how do we continue that sound? I'm like, all right, this is something completely new, and we are lucky enough at this point to have a solid fan base who trusts us to put out something good. And at the end of the day, we're always trying to make something that we would want to listen to. And if it doesn't pass that test, then it's like we're not putting it out.
You're able to zone out, for lack of a better term, what you've done before. Are you able to equally zone out what's been done around you?
Yeah, and that's a little tricky. Part of it is I try not to listen to, especially when I get like writing. I don't really listen to a lot of the bands that like would get lumped in with us, like more than like casual, like, oh, let me hear what the new whatever sounds like, and I go, wow, that's really cool. But I don't want to have something that I listen to so much get like burned into my skull somewhere to where later I'm writing something and I go, wow, that sounds cool, and then hear it again and go, that's because that's this band's riff. And that's not to say I dislike any of that stuff. It's just for ease of writing, I have to kind of separate myself from some of the stuff that would sound really close to us. But I listen to a ton of stuff, and it's when I find something I really like, I'm like, okay, why do I like that? That sounds nothing like us. How can I take the idea and move it around to make it sound very Acacia strain?
What for you, after 30, I mean, this is the 13th record. So when you look at that discography, what for you brings you to this point? Is it the love that you guys to be on the road together, or is it the creative side of things that you guys get to make something brand new out of nothing, every couple of years?
It's a bit of both. Like I love going on tour and being with my friends, playing music, and it all feels very absurd to me at the end of the day when I'm like, I'm I play guitar for a job. That's dumb. But I'm excited that I get to do it. I feel very lucky. It was a lot of work to get here, but I do, there's luck that plays into everything. You can be the best player in the world and work as hard as you want, and it can never catch on. But then on the other side of it, with the creativity, I think everyone in this band has a lot of creativity that they always need to get out. And part of the driving force of this band is the fact that there is always more to be said and there's always more to be written. So the band acts as like a vehicle for everyone's emotions that are too heavy to just be letting out on other people. Like, so it's like, all right, we're going to write some music and we're going to keep writing music. And it's what we do. And I can't imagine not doing it. So when bands like break up and they're like, all right, we're going to call it a day, I'm always like, how can you be done? Like, even if you don't tour anymore, like, just make more music. But I mean, to each their own. I could never not do this.
And for my last question, I want to ask you about something else that maybe you would like to do, and that is that I know Vincent is a big fan of horror movies. I see you have a Friday the 13th poster behind you there. I actually
Yeah.
have that same poster. I also have that Metallica poster.
Awesome.
So we're great minds think alike. We have we have similar taste. If you were given, or if the band perhaps was given the choice to do a score for either a horror movie or a horror series. Is there some that immediately you would jump on? I mean, I'm sure you would jump on at the opportunity regardless, but is there one that would be absolutely iconic for you to be involved with?
I mean, I would love to do that with pretty much anything that would be offered to us, but I would say, as much as like a movie like Sleepaway Camp is probably my favorite horror movie, and I love the Friday the 13th series, I think something like Event Horizon, something along
Wow.
those lines. I think we could write a really cool soundtrack too that like really fits the just how uncomfortable that movie is, and it's like, oh, you found space hell. Like, I would love to do something like that. That'd be cool.
Did not think you were going to go in that direction whatsoever. That is really cool.
Yeah, I'm not trying to be like, let me throw this one out of left field.
No, but it just seems like a
I
little bit
think that
out of
that
the
would.
box. Great idea, though.
I think it'd fit.
I think it would be great. I would actually love to see something like that. I think you guys have the sound that would help describe what that movie shows visually, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah,
You know, because I think that's what a great score does. A great score enhances what you're seeing already. It gives it another dimension, if you will. It's like going 4D.
yeah, and where you want it to like blend and mesh with everything, you don't want it to pull you out and be like, is that Acacia Strain? Kind of like watching Maximum Overdrive, and the whole soundtrack is AC/DC, and the score is AC/DC, and you're like, but it fits. This
I agree.
machines are attacking, and you just hear like wah 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 wah. You're like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. I love it. Devin, man, thank you very much for your time today. This was an absolute pleasure to talk to you about this new record. Once again, You Are Safe from God here, out October 24th on Rise Records, the latest from the Acacia strain. I hope to see you guys back in Canada very soon, playing in Toronto. I saw you guys last time you were in town. If I remember correctly, you guys were doing a tour with Fit for an Autopsy.
Yeah,
You guys played the Phoenix, and you played a bunch of Canadian dates. So
yeah.
kudos to you guys for playing a bunch of Canadian shows.
Try
Love
to
that
when we
shit.
can.
I loved it. I loved it. You guys played some like really weird places for us, like Barrie. Like who plays in
Yeah,
Barrie? You guys play there. So fucking kudos to you guys. I went to the show at the Phoenix in Toronto. The place was packed. It was crazy day. Like absolutely I mean, if you could bottle up the energy in that room that night, you could probably sell it as an energy drink.
I would love that.
The Acacia
That
Strain
was
energy drink.
it's a fun time. We love Canada. We love, especially playing Toronto is always a blast.
You guys are massively loved all over Canada. Let me tell you that. I tell you, I go to a lot of metal shows. I see your merch all over the place all the time. So there's a
Awesome.
huge fan base over here. And once again, man, really thank you. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me about the record today.
Hey, not a problem. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a great chat.
Take care, man. All the best.
You too.